We pick back up race 3 of 5 for Improved Production Tasmania's round 5 at Symmons Plains. Kyle Smith still had his mystery misfire from the previous day, while Morgan in the VH Commodore was struggling with some brake bias problems. At the start, Hayden Lovell missed a gear and dropped a couple of spots by turn 2. On lap 2, Steve Smith's Datsun developed a crank angle sensor problem, intermittently slowing the 120Y and nearly catching out Lovell. He would continue, the problem mostly affecting the 120Y going under the Symmons Plains Bridge. In the under 2 litres, Bennett was once again leading Madigan, the gap between the two barely more than a second for the whole race. The enthralling under 2 litre battle may have been a bit too distracting for race leader Matthew Grace. While Bennett held off Madigan, Colquhoun also just managed to hold out Richard Morgan's Commodore in the battle for 4th in the overs. Colquhoun's Big Falcon suffering late in the race from fading brakes. Race 4 saw some great racing throughout the field in both the unders and overs. Madigan had pushed so hard under brakes over the weekend to keep up with Bennett, he had worn his pads down to the backing plates. He only had some road spec replacements for the final and wouldn't be able to fight with Bennett. Over the weekend, Kyle Smith had replaced just about everything to find a cure for his misfire. Just before the double points final, the culprit was traced to a wire in the coil plug that had come adrift from its connector but was still inside the plug. Fortunately, Kyle is an electrician by trade and fixed the wire with a very rapid Datsun, now set to hunt the V8s in the longer Race 5 final. Kyle Smith's naturally aspirated Datsun 1200 was screaming as it should be, and was now the fourth fastest car on track. He slipped past Colquhoun, who was having brake dramas, and set off after Morgan's Commodore, who was also suffering from brake problems. Grace cruised to another round clean sweep, but only just from a fast finishing Steve Smith. On the last lap, with a certain second place for the round in reach, Lovell's Commodore or CSV Volante struck drama, possibly a blown head gasket. He had two options, either coast over the line but potentially be a mobile chicane, or dive into the pits out of everyone's way and retire. He chose the latter and kept out of the way from a fast finishing Kyle Smith. Grace won the round and had already secured the championship coming into this round. Second for the round was Steve Smith, following Hayden Lovell's DNF in the final. Morgan just edged out Colquhoun for third and also stretched his gap to him in the championship. Hayden Lovell was an unlucky fifth for the round, but had moved up to fourth in the championship. Kyle Smith just won the unders for the round from Bennett, who in turn just beat Madigan, a mere 10 points separating the trio. Smith still held a narrow lead in the championship to Bennett with just one round to go. We'll see you at the Baskerville finale. Bye for now.